Dear fellows, Assalamu alaikum. This is Hamad Ahmed with you. Welcome to one of the most awaited videos on CIA Part 1. Before moving forward, I would like to thank all of you for your love, appreciation, motivation and encouragement to make these videos. And I'm really honored by knowing that my previous videos were useful to pass this exam. I am sure by the end of the video you will be much confident and will have learned something new in a very easy manner. So let's move to the video.
Ji, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So let me share the notes with you first. Okay, so let us begin. Hopefully we will finish this unit, which is unit 1 of GLIME as well today, along with some practice, and we will continue tomorrow with some other practice and with some new unit, inshallah. My plan is to finish these 2 units in these 2 days, and then you will have whole week to practice the questions. And when you will practice the question, you will have some problems and some queries in those questions, and we will discuss all those queries and questions in next class. I have uploaded the same file in PDF format in the MS Teams. You can download from there as well. The things which we have discussed, at least 50% of those things have been discussed for the next units. Okay, CIA Part 1 Foundations of Internal Auditing. In this unit, IIA wants to make the basis for internal audit on which you will be performing the internal audit services. As per the IIA's guidance, this is the picture. There is a mission. The mission is to enhance and protect organizational value by providing risk-based and objective assurance, advice and insight. If you remember the definition of internal auditing, which we have studied already while comparing the difference between external audit and internal audit, you will see some common things which are also being represented here in the mission. They are also talking about the risk-based audit, which is assurance activity, and consulting activity, which is advice and insight. So this is the mission of the IIA for any organization across the globe. And to achieve this mission, they have these 2 bases or the pillars, main pillars. The first one is mandatory guidance. As you can see in yellow rectangle here, the mandatory guidance has 4 elements, which are core principles, as you can see here, then the definition, standards and code of ethics. So these are 4 core elements of the mandatory guidance. And then there is recommended guidance. Keep in mind that as the word shows, mandatory guidance, these principles, definition, working according to the definition of the internal audit, standards and code of ethics, these are compulsory to follow at all times by all the internal auditors or internal audit service providers. Please keep in mind that I am not saying CIAs, okay? Since the IIA is the only global body or organization representing the internal audit profession, so these are compulsory to follow by all auditors. Recommended guidance, it is implementation guidance and supplemental guidance. These are further divided into IG stands for implementation guidance, SG stands for supplemental guidance, G tags are IT audit related guidance, which is mainly the portion of the part 3, CIA part 3, and GAIT are guidance on the information technology risks. Okay, these are the recommended guidance. The lower portion is to be followed based on the specific requirements of the engagement and based on the industry. Let me show you this IG, SG and G tags. We will quickly go through it. Once you become the member of the IIA, you will have access to all these resources. You can simply download for free all these resources. As you can see here, these are standards and guidance, implementation guidance, which is covered in recommended guidance. So these are in different languages. Here you can see updated IIA's code of ethics, and these are downloads and links for IG stands for implementation guidelines, which we have just seen. So at the left corner you can see standard guidance. This is all the standards and all the guidance starts from here, and then there is mission of internal audit, which we have just seen. Then there is mandatory guidance, core principles, standards. We will go through these one by one in upcoming slides. And then there is recommended guidance. So recommended guidance has implementation guidance and supplemental guidance, which I was discussing a few minutes ago. So here the implementation guidance says they collectively address internal auditing's approach, methodologies and consideration, but do not detail process or procedures. Okay. Now we go to supplemental guidance. Supplemental guidance is also related to recommended guidance. and here you can see that supplemental guidance provides detailed guidance for conducting internal audit activities. These include topical areas, sector specific issues, as well as processes and procedures, tools and techniques, programs, step by step approaches, and examples of deliverables. As I told you earlier, that these are industry specific or engagement specific guidelines. For example, if you are working in the real estate industry, if you are working in TMT, telecommunication, media and technology, or any other industry, you can download all these from here. And G tags, as we discussed earlier, that this is Global Technology Audit Guides, G tags, and guides to assessment of IT risks. So these two specifically are related to CIA Part 3. Yes, is someone asking a question?
इनको स्टडी करने की और डाउनलोड करके प्रॉपर्ली थॉरोली गाइड स्टडी करने की जरूरत है?
बिल्कुल भी जरूरत नहीं है. फॉर द एग्जाम स्पेसिफिकली you don't have to download these things. The notes which I will provide you, the book and the questions which I have provided you or will provide you, they are enough to pass the exam. For member it is free. Now we come back to our topic. So we have studied the mission, and to achieve the mission we have to follow the mandatory guidance. This is the framework, okay? Mandatory guidance and recommended guidance, so that we can deliver value. Now I have tried to put exam alert in each slide. So from exam point of view, you have to be careful about the composition of mandatory guidance and recommended guidance. For example, if the question asks which elements are included in the mandatory guidance, or all of the following are the elements of the mandatory guidance except. So similar questions you will see in the exam. So you have to be careful that there are these 4 elements: core principles, definition, standards and code of ethics, which are related to mandatory guidance. If anything he has put from here, for example, if he puts IG, implementation guidelines, or supplementary guidelines, or G tags or GAITR in this, so that would be the wrong answer. You have to remember that there are 4 elements in mandatory guidance and these 2 are in the recommended guidance. All of you are with me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so one by one we will talk about these elements of the mandatory guidance. The first one is related to core principles. These are the core principles of the mandatory guidance. Following them will enable the internal auditors or internal audit department to align with the strategies, objectives, goals and risks, appropriately position and properly staff within that organization. They will demonstrate integrity, they will demonstrate independence and objectivity, competence and due professional care. They maintain the high quality and continuous improvement, communicates effectively, they are insightful, proactive and future focused. The exam alert is related to effectiveness of the core principles. The question will ask you how we can attain the effectiveness of the core principles as highlighted or narrated or explained in the mandatory guidance. So the answer to this question will be effectiveness in internal audit activity comes from or originates from adherence to the core principles. When these principles will be followed, then effectiveness will come into play. You got my point?
Yes. Right.
Okay. So one thing I want to mention here, that you will see some text in yellow. So yellow ones are the hints or alerts for your exam. Whenever there is a question related to effectiveness, it will always come through adherence or compliance. Okay, so this you have to keep in mind. It is a general rule. One more thing I want to clear you guys right here, that your vocabulary should be good to understand the question. Here they are saying adherence. In the next question or in the next scenario, they will change this word. They will say comply or synonym related to this adherence. So whatever the word they use, the effectiveness will come because of its compliance. So this you have to make sure, right? So this you have to remember that throughout these slides, these highlighted words are the keywords which will help you in your preparation for exam. So let's move to the second element, which is definition. This is the same definition which we have studied earlier in the lecture 1. Internal auditing is an independent assurance and consulting activity designed to add value and improve an organization's operations. It helps an organization accomplish its objectives by bringing a systematic disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of risk management, control and governance process, right? So this is the definition. First we saw that we have to comply with the mandatory guidance. complying with the mandatory guidance means that we have to comply with 4 elements. The first element was core principles. The second element is the definition. What does that mean, comply with the definition? Whatever we do, it should add value in the organization's processes, right? This is the ultimate objective.
Okay. सर ये इंडिपेंडेंट ऑब्जेक्टिव एश्योरेंस समझ आती है. कंसल्टिंग एक्टिविटी क्या चीज़ है?
Consulting activity is related to non-assurance engagements. यानी ऐसी कोई भी एक्टिविटी जिसके अंदर आप अश्योरेंस प्रोवाइड नहीं कर रहे, यू आर प्रोवाइडिंग द रिकमेंडेशंस और सजेशंस टू द मैनेजमेंट, नॉट एज अ पार्ट ऑफ अश्योरेंस एंगेजमेंट बट एज अ पार्ट ऑफ एडवाइजरी एंगेजमेंट. आज की ही क्लास में हम आगे डिटेल में इसमें पढ़ेंगे इंशाल्लाह. थर्ड एलिमेंट इज रिलेटेड टू स्टैंडर्ड्स. Standards are based on a framework which is called ISPP, stands for International Standards for Professional Practices. This ISPP framework has 4 purposes. The first one is basic principles and adherence to IPPFs. The second one is framework. The third one is evaluation or measurement. The fourth one is improved organization processes. What does this mean? Actually, this is a framework on which the standards are based. The ISPP will define the principles and how to adhere or comply to those principles. Then it will give a framework in the ambit in which you will work, the internal audit department or the internal audit activity will work. Then there should be a criteria to measure the work of the internal audit activity, and ultimately it should result in the improved organizational processes. This is the third element, and we will see the details of this framework in the upcoming slides. So exam alert is all of the followings are the purposes of the ISPP or International Standards for Professional Practices except. Okay, so you have to remember that these are 4 purposes of ISPP. One thing he might include from previous slide which we have seen. For example, he might give you something from here, demonstrate integrity. So this is not the purpose of ISPP, or he might give a statement here that aligns with strategies, objectives and goals and risks. So this is not the part of purpose of ISPP. So you have to be careful what he is asking. Now we move on to the standards.
ISPP जो standards हैं ये IPPF इशू करता है.
Yes.
जो practice professional
IPPF, yes वही है. IPPF basically
standards हैं. यहाँ पर internal audit के standards की बात नहीं है कि जो IIA इशू कर रहा है.
ये वही है. Is there any question? Keep in mind that there will be hardly a simple question. They will mix the information just to check your knowledge and application capability. The next thing is related to ISPP standards. The framework. There are 3 types of standards. The first one is performance standards. The second one is attribute standards and the implementation standards. Okay. All the performance standards with the number starting from 2000. Okay. So the performance standards deal with the managing internal audit activity, which is ultimately the responsibility of Chief Audit Executive. And who is Chief Audit Executive? Chief Audit Executive is the ambassador or the representative of Audit Committee. The second thing which performance standards explain is the nature of work, whether it is an assurance activity or a consulting activity. Then engagement planning, performing the engagement, communicating results to CAE and the management, monitoring of results is the responsibility of Chief Audit Executive. Evaluation criteria of IIA or audit function, this is also covered in the performance standard, that how the internal audit activity has performed their work, ultimately are they adding value or not, and management's acceptance of risk. So these points are covered in performance standards. The details of these standards we will study in upcoming units and in part 2. Okay, I have already told you the exam alert here that the managing responsibility of internal audit activity is responsibility of CAE, and monitoring of results is related to CAE. Okay, and you have to remember these things are covered in performance standards, not in any other standard. The examiner might include something from attribute standard, so that would be the wrong answer. Okay, attribute standards. What does attribute mean? Hamza, what does attribute mean?
Internal audit department का एक feature.
Okay, anyone else? Sorry?
Quality or a feature regarded as a characteristic.
Very good. Attribute simply means characteristics. Okay, characteristics of whom? Of the individuals performing the internal audit activity and the internal audit department as a whole department or as a function. Okay, so attribute standards deal with these 2 things. Got it? So these are characteristics. The attribute standards are denoted by 1000. In the exam, the numbers will never be asked. The attribute standards tell about or explain about the purpose, authority and responsibility of internal audit activity. Exam alert here is that purpose, authority and responsibility is defined where? In the charter and formally approved by the board. So this is the exam alert that you have to keep in mind. The next one is independence and objectivity.
भाई कह रहा हूँ ये जो चार्टर है बेसिकली ये जो एंगेजमेंट लेटर नहीं होता.
एंगेजमेंट लेटर और चार्टर में डिफरेंस होता है. एंगेजमेंट लेटर आप क्लाइंट के साथ जिस चीज का आप ऑडिट करने लगते हो उसके साथ साइन करते हो. चार्टर बोर्ड आपको रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी देता है.
एग्जैक्टली हम असल में बात कर रहे हैं इंटरनल ऑडिट फंक्शन की. We are not talking about any service providing firm. We are talking about the in-house internal audit department. First thing. Second thing, the engagement letter has the scope of that activity, which is agreed between the client and the audit firm. It is a different thing. The charter is the document which will define the internal audit department's position, its authority, its responsibility and purpose. This is a document which will govern the internal audit department and its activity. हम उसमें भी वैसे यही चीज़ें लिख रहे होते हैं. मैं आपकी कन्फ्यूजन समझ रहा हूँ. हाँ, उसमें हम लिख रहे होते हैं कि वी विल हैव unrestricted access to documents, to any person, to interview this, that they will have this charter as their departmental document, like any department has. Like purchasing department has purchase manual, sales department has sales and marketing manual, HR has HR manual, right? So this is that document which will govern the internal audit department's activity. Okay, got this point? We talked about that attribute means characteristics of the individuals as well as the internal audit department. Hence it is saying independence and objectivity of individuals as well as the department. Then proficiency and due professional care. Then quality assurance and improvement program, which is the ultimate responsibility of chief audit executive. Okay, we move to the next point, which is implementation standards. In implementation standards, as the word implies, implementation of the above standards, which are attribute and performance standards, according to the specific guidelines. Okay, these implementation standards deal with the specific services. For example, if you are providing assurance service or if you are providing the consulting service, then you have to refer to this standard, that how these activities will be implemented. Okay, it guides how to implement previous standards in different engagements, so you have to follow them as per the nature of the engagement, if it is assurance engagement or the consulting engagement. So these are implementation standards. This was all about the standards. So we have already studied core principles, definition. Currently we are discussing the standards, and then we will discuss the code of ethics. In upcoming units we will discuss all these things. I have already explained you about exam alerts in this whole slide. Okay, now let's have practice questions so that we can know where we are standing. Please read the question. I will ask one by one. Please don't answer the question. When I will ask, then answer. Okay, so you have 1 minute to study this question, and in next 1 minute we will answer and discuss this question. So we will spend 2 minutes. Okay, now I'm going to ask the answer. Can you please tell me what is the answer?
Attribute standard.
Attribute standards. Okay, Kashif, can you please tell me the answer? Okay, please keep in mind that we will not say A, B, C, D. We will say Alpha, Bravo, Charlie and Delta. Okay, so it will be easier to listen and to speak and to understand. So Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. Okay, so your answer is Alpha. Okay, Kashif, why did you select Alpha?
Because अब ये हमने पढ़ा तो है कि attribute standards पे जो हमने define किया उसमें ये था कि attribute standards उनकी characteristics को define करता है. Audit department.
Very good. Very good. The key word in this question was characteristic. If you see characteristics, you will immediately go to attribute standards. Got it? This is the easiest example which I am giving you here to attempt the question. And another question can be extracted from this question. All of the following are the types of standards except. What is the answer of this except? Delta, very good. Independent standard is not standard. Independence is related to code of ethics or the attribute standards. It is part of attribute standards, first thing, or is also related to code of ethics. It will study in the upcoming slides. Okay, so this is not the standard. Okay, now we move on to the next topic, which is the fourth element of this mandatory guidance, which is code of ethics. So the code of ethics is also called ethical conduct. The primary purpose of code of ethics is to provide basis for the ethical culture and to promote it. This is the primary purpose of the code of ethics. The ethical culture will be developed among the internal audit department as well as in the organization. he should be trusted department, right? Otherwise, he will not be in a position to advise or to add value in any operation or organization. The Code of Ethics also provides an objective criteria for evaluation of behavior of the persons who are involved in providing internal audit services. So it also provides an objective criteria that the behavior or the action which any person has performed, does it comply with the Code of Ethics or it is against the Code of Ethics. Characteristic of this Code of Ethics is that it also provides trust to insiders as well as to outsiders. Insiders means the management or the process owner, and to outsider as well, when they know that they also have a code of ethics or code of ethical conduct in place, they trust the organization and their operations. So this is also a benefit of having ethical conduct.
We can also say that trust to all stakeholders.
Yes, we can. Yes, definitely. We can also use here the term stakeholders. Another important thing that all of these code of ethics, which we are going to study now, these are applicable to all professionals, not only CIAs. If you see these code of ethics, which are integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, and competency, these all are similar across all the professional bodies, whether it is CA, ACCA, CPA, America, CFA, or CISA, even CISA, Certified Fraud Examiner. These are similar everywhere. So these principles does not mean that it is only related to CIA. As per IIA, all these code of ethical conducts and the rules which we will study here, they are applicable to all internal audit service providers, whether he is a CIA or not. The second important thing is these are applicable globally. It is not the question that since it is a US certification, so it will only be applicable in the US. This is not the case. All these things which we are studying here, this is exam alert, okay? All these things which we are studying here as the elements of the mandatory guidance, they are applicable globally. So this was all about the code of ethics. Now we move on to the second point, which is related to the code of ethics has two essential elements, which are principles. These are the principles. It has 4 core principles, keep in mind, okay? And then there are rules of conduct. The rules of conduct are the enhancement details of how to apply these principles. Which principles? These 4 principles. So the rules of conduct explain if you confront any situation, you have to follow the rule of conduct, which will ultimately comply with the principles. So you can say the rules of conduct are based on these 4 principles. Okay?
Right.
So I have already discussed all the exam alerts in this slide. One important thing you have to remember that the 4 principles or core components of code of ethics are these. For example, he will put due professional care here. Instead of writing confidentiality, he will write due professional care. Okay, now we move on to the next slide. As we have just studied the principles of code of ethics, now we will have a practice question. So I will give you 1 minute to study this question and then 1 minute to answer. Okay? Yes. Yes, Numan, what is the answer?
Delta.
Delta, okay. Yes, Shahid, what is the answer? Okay, Kashif?
I think Delta.
Delta, okay. Shahid, can you please tell me why you have selected Bravo?
Because it's related to the integrity principle. It's not related to the confidentiality. Because being a CAE, you have to be responsible to the audit, identify all the anomalies highlight to the audit.
Okay. Yes, Hamza, why you selected Bravo?
Firstly, there's nothing in the text that says violated the code of ethics. So first thing is that he upheld the code of ethics. That is why it's Bravo. On a second note, he actually did something towards the integrity, because CFOs worked for more than 15 years. So that might have caused some factors that chief audit executive might have overlooked this thing, but due to the principle of integrity, he reported this fact to audit community.
Okay, good. Yes, guys, the answer to this question is actually bravo. Now I will go through the question. A newly hired CAE discovered that CFO is paying personal expenses through the organization. Upon further investigation, the CAE found that CFO is submitting these expenses as research and development. The CFO has worked for the organization for 15 years. The CAE immediately notified the audit committee. Did the CAE violated any principle or not? So this is the question. I will also discuss with you the approach of MCQs. The first and most important point in attempting a question is to understand what the question is asking. Understanding the question is important and critical to answer it correctly. So you can clearly see that CFO is hiding the expenses, his personal expenses. He is charging to research and development expenses, okay, and he has been working for the organization for 15 years. So this was the whole scenario. This was not the question. This was only the background of the question. The question is related to CAE. CAE immediately notified the audit committee. This is the question. The question is related to CAE, not CFO. So did the CAE has violated or not? This is the question. Okay. So you only have to focus the CAE's course of action. That's it. You don't have to worry what happened or what has been written in the background information. You have to see what CAE has done. Was it correct or incorrect according to Code of Ethics? So
I think 15 years just to add confusion in the mind of students.
exactly. We will also see long questions today. I have put intentionally just to give you a flavor of the questions which are asked in CIA. Just to confuse the mind, they give such a long information so that you might not go to correct answer.
In the end, I would like to have your comments in the comment section. Please like, subscribe and share my channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon, because whenever I will upload a video, you will have direct notification in your inbox. Stay home, stay safe, and let us make this quarantine period an effective and learning period. Take care. Bye.